The Supreme Council of the Galactic Federation had made a grave mistake, one that would echo through the cosmos for centuries to come. We had chosen Earth as our first contact. You want to explain to me again why we picked the blue marble with the bipeds who still get excited about finding shiny rocks? Commander Zord asked, his third eye twitching with irritation as he stared at the holographic display of Earth. I, Chief Diplomatic Officer Praxx Vanderbilt, sighed deeply. My respiratory sacs inflated to maximum capacity before deflating with a sound not unlike a balloon losing air through a pinched opening. The statistical models suggested they were the least likely to immediately try to kill us, I replied, scrolling through my data pad. Plus, their entertainment broadcasts showed considerable promise. They have this thing called pizza that the council was particularly interested in. Zord snorted. So we're risking interstellar relations for food? Not just food, I corrected. Cultural exchange. We bring them advanced technology. They bring us their unique perspective. Well, their unique perspective just headbutted Ambassador Kulax and stole his ceremonial robe, Zord pointed out. I winced. The human in question was currently running across the landing field, wearing nothing but undergarments and our ambassador's shimmering diplomatic vestments, screaming something about alien lizard people and government conspiracies. That's just Gary, explained Dr. Tamika Jones, the human xenobiologist assigned as our liaison. She didn't even look up from her tablet as she spoke. He's from Florida. We tried to warn your advance team not to land in Tampa. What is this Florida and why does it produce such intense specimens? I asked, genuinely curious despite my growing apprehension. Dr. Jones finally looked up, pushing her glasses back up her nose. Florida is like Earth's evolutionary pressure cooker. Extreme heat, extreme humidity, extreme wildlife, extreme politics. It creates extreme people. We have researched your planet extensively for 7 of your decades, I protested. Our files mention nothing about regional human variants with enhanced unpredictability. Yeah, well, your files probably didn't mention a lot of things, Dr. Jones replied with a shrug. Like how humans respond to being told we're being welcomed into the galactic community as a developing species. I blinked all 4 of my eyes in sequence, a gesture of confusion in my culture. Is that not an honor? The council spent 3 standard cycles debating the precise wording to avoid offense. Dr. Jones laughed, not the polite, diplomatic laugh we had been trained to recognize, but a full-bodied sound that involved showing teeth and slapping her thigh. Let me explain something about humans, she said when she finally composed herself. We're the species that looked at the vast, unknown ocean and said, I wonder what's on the other side. We're the species that saw birds flying and spent thousands of years trying to join them. We're the species that, upon discovering nuclear energy, immediately thought, I bet this would make a great bomb. Your point being? Zord asked, his patience visibly thinning. My point is, Dr. Jones continued, telling humans they're developing is like telling a shark it's just getting the hang of swimming. Just then, a tremendous crash echoed across the landing field. We turned to see Gary, the Florida man, had somehow managed to climb atop our secondary scout vessel and was attempting to pry off one of the decorative light panels. For science, he bellowed, right before security drones surrounded him. Should we stop him? I asked hesitantly. Nah, Dr. Jones waved dismissively. The president specifically suggested bringing Gary to this meeting. Your planetary leader requested this individual's presence? Zord was so shocked his cranial ridges fully extended. Why would any rational government official? Strategy, interrupted a new voice. A tall human with piercing eyes and a neatly pressed suit approached us. Jack Harper, presidential science advisor. You'll have to excuse the unorthodox welcome. Unorthodox. I sputtered. Your specimen has violated 17 different contact protocols in the span of 12 minutes. Harper smiled. Not the warm, welcoming smile our cultural research had prepared us for, but something sharper, more calculating. "Tell me, Officer Vanderbilt," he said smoothly, "what would your council do if they received reports that Earth was too unpredictable, too chaotic to properly join your Federation?" A cold feeling spread through my thermal regulation network. They would likely recommend limited contact protocols, observation rather than integration. Precisely, Harper nodded. And we can't have that, can we? Not when you're offering terraforming technology, advanced medicine, and FTL travel. Understanding dawned on me with the force of a binary sunrise. You're using this Florida man as a diplomatic tool? Gary serves a purpose, Harper confirmed. He shows you our unpredictability, our chaos, while simultaneously making the rest of us look reasonable by comparison. I stared at the human, newfound respect mingling with horror. That's diabolically clever. We've been preparing for first contact since we first looked up at the stars, Harper said with a shrug. Just not in the ways you might expect. Meanwhile, Gary had somehow escaped the security drones and was now attempting to communicate with our ship's external waste disposal unit. "Hey, little space buddy," he shouted, petting the confused maintenance bot. "You look like my cousin Earl's lawnmower after the lightning strike." Dr. Jones sighed. "Perhaps we should move this meeting inside. The welcome reception is ready, and I promise the rest of the delegation as well. They're more like Jack than Gary." "Is that supposed to be reassuring?" Zort muttered. "Trust me," Harper said with that same calculating smile, "Gary is a controlled variable in this experiment." As we walked toward the makeshift conference center, I couldn't help but notice the other humans watching us. Their expressions weren't fearful or even particularly awed. They looked curious, evaluating, like scientists observing an interesting new species. Which I realized with a start was exactly what they were doing. "Before we go in," Harper said, stopping us at the entrance, "I should warn you. We've prepared some gifts for your delegation." "Gifts?" I asked warily, suddenly remembering historical accounts of the Trojan equine. "Cultural exchanges," Harper clarified. "Nothing dangerous. Though I would advise Ambassador Kulax to avoid the hot sauce." "What is hot sauce?" Zord asked. Harper's smile widened. "Just a little taste of Florida." The reception hall was elegantly decorated with symbols from both our cultures. Humans in formal attire mingled awkwardly with members of our delegation. Everyone looked uncomfortable, but determined to appear comfortable, creating a peculiar atmosphere of forced relaxation. Ambassador Kulax had recovered from his earlier encounter with Gary and was now engaged in conversation with the human president. Despite losing his ceremonial robe, the ambassador had maintained his dignity by repurposing a tablecloth into a makeshift toga. "Ah, Officer Vanderbilt," the president called out, waving us over. "Ambassador Kulax was just telling me about your council's proposal for Earth's provisional membership." "Yes," I said carefully. "The council believes a period of guided integration would be most beneficial for all parties." "Fascinating," the president replied, though her tone suggested she found it anything but. "And how long does this provisional status typically last?" "For developing worlds, usually between 50 to 100 of your years," Ambassador Kulax answered proudly. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. "I see," the president said, her smile never wavering. "And during this time, Earth would have access to what level of technology sharing?" "Level 3, of course," Ambassador Kulax replied. "Basic medical advancements, sustainable energy solutions, limited off-world travel capabilities." "Limited," the president repeated. "And who determines when we're ready for what would it be?" "Level 4. "The Supreme Council," I interjected, sensing danger, "based on comprehensive evaluation metrics." Dr. Jones coughed into her hand. It sounded suspiciously like colonialism. "Well, that's certainly one approach," the president said diplomatically. "We have an alternative proposal." Ambassador Praxx blinked in surprise. "Alternative? But the council has spent decades crafting this integration plan." "Yes, and we appreciate the thought," Harper jumped in. "But Earth has its own suggestion. We're calling it the Mutual Advancement Treaty." From his briefcase, Harper produced a stack of documents, actual physical paper, bound together with what appeared to be metal rings, out charmingly primitive. "What is this?" Ambassador Praxx asked, cautiously accepting the document. "Our counteroffer," the president explained, "in full technology exchange, open borders, mutual defense pact, and immediate voting rights on your council." I nearly choked on my ceremonial greeting beverage. That's unprecedented. No new species has ever been expected to sit quietly in the corner for a century. Harper finished for me. "Yes, we gathered that might be the standard procedure. We're not particularly interested in standard procedures." Before Ambassador Praxx could respond, a commotion erupted at the buffet table. Gary had returned, now wearing what appeared to be a lampshade as a hat, and was enthusiastically mixing various alien and human foods into an alarming concoction. "Oh, I all gotta try this," he shouted. "I added some of that purple space goo to the guacamole and it tastes like burning rainbows." 3 members of our scientific team were already sampling his creation, their color-changing skin indicating either extreme pleasure or the early stages of anaphylactic shock. "Should we?" I gestured helplessly toward the chaos. "Let them enjoy the cultural exchange," the president said with a wink. "Now, about our proposal." Ambassador Praxx cleared his throat. "Respectfully, Madam President, Earth simply isn't ready for full integration. Your technological development, while impressive for your age as a civilization, falls well below Federation standards." "Our technological development that you know about," Harper corrected quietly. A chill ran through my central nervous system. "What exactly does that mean?" The president and Harper exchanged glances. "Why don't we demonstrate?" the president suggested. She nodded to an aide, who pressed a button on a small device. Outside, through the large windows of the reception hall, we watched as the sky shifted. Like a curtain being pulled aside, revealing what had been hidden behind it. Where there had been empty atmosphere before, now hung thousands of spacecraft, human spacecraft, in formation around our delegation's ships. "They were there the whole time," I whispered in disbelief. "How did our sensors not detect them?" "Perception filter technology," Harper explained casually, as if discussing the weather. "We reverse-engineered it from a crashed scout ship in 1947. Ambassador Praxx's ceremonial tablecloth slipped from his shoulders in shock. That's level 7 technology." "Is it?" the president asked innocently. "We wouldn't know. We haven't been properly categorized yet." Across the room, Gary was now teaching several of our cultural anthropologists a dance called the Gator Chomp, while balancing a plate of those strange food combinations on his head. "You know," Dr. Jones said conversationally, "we have about 200 million more people exactly like Gary. Just in case anyone's wondering what happened to the last alien species that tried to, how did you phrase it? Implement guided integration on Earth?" The implied threat hung in the air like a storm cloud. "There's no record of any prior contact with Earth," I protested weakly. Harper smiled that unnerving smile again. "Exactly." As the implications sank in, I realized the council had made not one grave mistake, but 2. The first was choosing Earth for first contact. The second was assuming we would be the ones doing the choosing. So the president said cheerfully, "Shall we discuss our mutual advancement treaty?" As equals. In the background, Gary had somehow convinced our chief medical officer to try something called a body shot. And that was just the first hour of humanity's official entrance onto the galactic stage. The reception continued well into the night, a bizarre mixture of high diplomacy and whatever Gary was doing at any given moment. I found myself increasingly fascinated by these humans and their contradictions. One moment they were presenting complex astronomical calculations that challenged our own understanding of celestial mechanics, and the next they were teaching our cultural exchange officer how to do the worm. "You look confused," Dr. Jones said, appearing beside me with 2 glasses of some amber liquid. I admitted, accepting the drink cautiously. "Your species is difficult to categorize." "That's kind of our thing," she replied, taking a sip. "We don't fit neatly into boxes." I sampled the drink and immediately regretted it. It burned like engine coolant, but somehow in a pleasant way. "What is this?" I gasped. "Bourbon," she said with a grin. "Another gift from Florida, though Kentucky would argue about that." Across the room, Ambassador Kulaks was deep in conversation with the human Secretary of Defense. The ambassador's usual purple complexion had shifted to a concerned mauve. "Your military capabilities," I began carefully, "they're more advanced than we anticipated." Dr. Jones shrugged. "We've had some help, though not in the way you might think." "Meaning?" "Competition drives innovation," she explained. "You think our space fleet is impressive? You should see what we've done with communications technology because teenagers wanted better ways to share videos of their pets." I blinked in confusion. "You're suggesting consumer demand drove your technological advancement more than military necessity?" "I'm suggesting," she replied, leaning closer, "that you can't predict humans based on any model you might have. We developed nuclear weapons before we cured polio. We put a man on the moon using computers less powerful than the device I'm currently wearing on my wrist. We created incredible art and music while simultaneously inventing increasingly efficient ways to destroy ourselves. And yet you survived," I observed. "So far," she admitted, "though sometimes just barely." Gary chose that moment to demonstrate another human tradition, something called a keg stand. It involved him being held upside down while consuming beverages directly from a container. Several junior members of our science team were taking detailed notes. "Is he really necessary?" I asked, gesturing toward the spectacle. Dr. Jones laughed. "More than you know. Gary as well, let's call him a pressure release valve. He represents the chaotic part of humanity that we usually try to keep under control. But it's always there, bubbling beneath the surface." "That's terrifying," I said honestly. "It should be," she agreed. "But it's also our greatest strength. When predictable methods fail, we still have chaos to fall back on." As if to demonstrate her point, the light suddenly flickered and dimmed. Alarmed murmurs spread through the crowd. "Relax, everyone," called a technician. "Just a small power surge, nothing to worry about." But I noticed Harper and the president exchange meaningful glances before subtly moving toward the exits. Something was happening. "Dr. Jones," I said quietly, "what's going on?" She checked her device and frowned. "We've got company. Unauthorized ships entering orbit." "More of yours?" I asked hopefully. "No," she replied, her expression grim. "And I'm guessing not more of yours either." Commander Zord appeared at my side, his communication device buzzing with activity. "Vanderbilt, we're receiving strange signals. Multiple vessels approaching on Vector 227. They're not responding to hails." The president tapped a glass to get everyone's attention. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored guests, we seem to have an unexpected situation developing. As a precaution, we'll be moving this reception to our secondary location. Please follow your assigned security personnel in an orderly fashion." What happened next was anything but orderly. The humans moved with practiced efficiency, transforming from diplomatic hosts to military precision in seconds. Our delegation, by contrast, looked like confused hatchlings during their first gravity adjustment. "Who are they?" I asked as Dr. Jones guided me toward an exit. "We don't know yet," she replied, her voice steady despite the chaos. "But whoever they are, they picked the wrong day to crash this party." Outside, the night sky was ablaze with distant flashes of light. Not stars, but weapons fire. "Is this?" I struggled to form the question. "Is this part of your demonstration?" Dr. Jones looked at me with genuine surprise. "You think we arranged an alien invasion to impress you?" "Did you not?" I asked, suddenly unsure of everything. She laughed, but this time it held no humor. "Even Florida man has his limits." Speaking of whom, I realized I hadn't seen Gary since the evacuation began. "Where is your unpredictable specimen?" As if summoned by my question, a roaring engine sound filled the air. Around the corner of the building came a monstrous vehicle on oversized wheels, driven by none other than Gary. He had somehow acquired a wide-brimmed hat and appeared to be chewing on a plant stem. "Yeehaw!" he shouted over the engine's roar. "Who wants a ride in Big Bertha?" Dr. Jones closed her eyes briefly, as if seeking patience from some higher power. Of course he found the monster truck. Of course he did. "Is that a tactical vehicle?" I asked, genuinely confused. "No," she sighed. "It's just very, very Florida." Gary skidded the enormous vehicle to a stop beside us. "Heard we got space trouble. Big Bertha's ready to rumble." Harper appeared, somehow looking completely unruffled despite the emergency. "Actually, Gary, that might be exactly what we need right now." And that was how I, Chief Diplomatic Officer Praxx Vanderbilt of the Galactic Federation, found myself climbing into a machine called a monster truck with a Florida man at the wheel, headed toward what might very well be the second first contact of the day. But this one, I suspected, wouldn't be nearly as diplomatic. "This baby can hit 90 on a good day," Gary shouted over the roar of Big Bertha's engines as we bounced across the field toward the secondary command center. The massive wheels crushed everything in their path, including what I was fairly certain was expensive scientific equipment. I clung desperately to what Gary called a "oh crap" handle, while Commander Zort turned an alarming shade of green beside me. "Is this really necessary?" Zort groaned as we hit another bump that sent us all airborne for a terrifying moment. "Fastest way to the bunker," Dr. Jones replied calmly, somehow maintaining her composure despite the chaos. "And right now, speed matters more than comfort." Above us, the sky continued to light up with flashes of weapons fire. The unknown vessels had engaged with Earth's defense fleet, creating an impromptu light show that would have been beautiful if it weren't so terrifying. "Looks like 4th of July up there," Gary whooped, taking one hand off the steering wheel to point at the sky. This resulted in the vehicle swerving dangerously before he corrected course. "Please keep both appendages on the control mechanism." Ambassador Praxx pleaded from the back seat, his ceremonial tablecloth now serving as a makeshift air sickness bag. "Sorry about that, alien buddy," Gary replied, not sounding sorry at all. "Just excited. We ain't had a proper space battle since the Walmart parking lot incident of 2019. I shot a questioning look at Dr. Jones, who shook her head. "Don't ask. Classified." The massive vehicle finally skidded to a halt outside a nondescript building that had been disguised as a maintenance shed. Armed guards nodded at Dr. Jones and waved us through. Inside, the shed opened up into a massive underground command center humming with activity. Dozens of humans in military uniforms moved with purpose between workstations displaying tactical information. On the largest screen, a real-time battle was unfolding in Earth's orbit. "Status report," Harper demanded as he strode into the room, somehow having arrived before us despite our expedited transportation method. 11 unknown vessels, replied a stern-looking woman with silver streaks in her dark hair. Her uniform identified her as Admiral Patel, non-Federation design. They're engaging both Earth and Federation ships with what appears to be neutralization tactics rather than destruction. They're trying to capture, not kill, the President observed, appearing beside Harper. Interesting. I cleared my throat. If I may, do you have visual confirmation of the vessels? The Federation has extensive databases of known spacefaring species. Admiral Patel gave me an appraising look before nodding to a technician. The main screen shifted to show a close-up of one of the attacking ships. My blood ran cold. Graxians, Commander Zord hissed. Pirates and technology scavengers. You know them? Harper asked sharply. The Federation has had encounters with their kind before, I admitted. They operate on the fringes of civilized space, raiding developing worlds for technology and resources. Dr. Jones crossed her arms. So they're space pirates who prey on planets that can't defend themselves. Charming. They're opportunists, Ambassador Kulax explained, having recovered somewhat from our journey. They must have detected our first contact protocols and decided to investigate. And now they've found 2 civilizations for the price of 1, the President concluded. Gary, who had been uncharacteristically quiet since entering the command center, suddenly perked up. Space pirates? Like with Space Parrots and Space Pegulig? No, Gary, Dr. Jones said patiently. More like organized criminals with spaceships. Aw, that's disappointing. Gary frowned, then brightened again. But hey, still cool. Space criminals. Can I shoot at them? The President actually seemed to consider this for a moment before Admiral Patel intervened. Sir, we have a situation. The Graxians have locked onto the Federation's main vessel and are attempting to board. On screen, we watched as one of the pirate ships maneuvered alongside our diplomatic vessel, extending docking tubes. Our crew. Ambassador Kulax gasped. There are 60 Federation citizens aboard. Your ship's defenses? Harper inquired. Minimal, Commander Zord admitted. It's a diplomatic vessel, not a warship. The President turned to Admiral Patel. Options? We can deploy interceptors, the Admiral replied, but by the time they reach orbit, the Graxians will already be aboard the Federation vessel. A tense silence fell over the command center. I realized with growing dread that we were about to witness the capture of our people and our technology. I have an idea, Gary announced suddenly, causing everyone to turn and stare at him. The President raised an eyebrow. Let's hear it, Gary. Well, Gary began, unusually thoughtful. When my cousin Earl had his boat stolen last summer, we didn't chase the thieves. We just used the remote starter to turn on all the speakers at full volume playing Earl's polka collection. Dr. Jones blinked. You scared them away with polka music? Nah, Gary grinned. But it distracted EM long enough that they crashed into the dock. Then we got AM with the net guns. Harper was already moving toward Admiral Patel. He's not wrong. We need a distraction. The Admiral nodded. But what could possibly? I might have a suggestion, I interrupted, an idea forming. Federation vessels are equipped with emergency systems that can be remotely activated, including the atmospheric regulators. Commander Zord caught on immediately. We could trigger a non-toxic but highly irritating atmospheric saturation. You want to tear gas your own ship? Dr. Jones asked incredulously. Not tear gas, I corrected. Something more uniquely disorienting. Something the Graxians wouldn't have encountered before. Harper's eyes gleamed with understanding. Something from Earth? Like Earl's chili, Gary exclaimed. One whiff and you'll be seeing through time. The president tapped her chin thoughtfully. The chemical compound release system on your ship, could it disperse an Earth-based substance? Theoretically, yes, Commander Zort nodded. But what would be effective against Graxians? All eyes turned to Gary, who was now vibrating with excitement. I know just the thing. 20 minutes later, I watched in horrified fascination as Gary, now dressed in an improvised environmental suit, and carefully mixed various liquids from his personal collection into a container. The resulting concoction was an alarming shade of orange and emitted fumes that made my eyes water even from a distance. What exactly is in that? I asked Dr. Jones, who was wisely standing several meters back. From what I can tell, she replied, hot sauce, energy drinks, something called moonshine, and I think that's his cologne. The chemical weapon of choice for Florida man, Harper added, looking both impressed and disturbed. Gary sealed the container with a flourish. I call it swamp gas special. Guaranteed to clear a trailer park in under 30 seconds. The Federation engineers had rigged a connection to our ship's atmospheric systems. All that remained was to upload the chemical composition to the dispensers and activate them remotely. Ambassador Kulaks approached Gary with formal dignity, despite the absurdity of the situation. On behalf of the Federation, I thank you for your creative solution. Oh, it's nothing. Gary waved dismissively. Just doing my part for interstellar relations. Interstellar, Dr. Jones corrected automatically. Say that too. On the main screen, we could see the Graxians had successfully breached our vessel and were moving through the corridors. They've reached the command deck, Admiral Patel reported. Uploading chemical composition now. We watched as the Graxian boarding party, tall humanoids with mottled gray skin and elaborate breathing apparatus, began accessing our ship's systems. Now? Gary asked eagerly. The president nodded. Now. Admiral Patel pressed a button, and on screen, we saw a fine mist begin to spray from the ship's ventilation system. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The Graxians froze, then began flailing wildly. Even without audio, their panic was evident. Several dropped their weapons to claw at their breathing apparatus. Others ran in circles, bumping into walls and each other. It appears the swamp gas special is particularly effective against their olfactory sensors, Commander Zord observed clinically, though I could detect a note of satisfaction in his voice. Yeehaw! Gary pumped his fist. That's Florida hospitality for ya. Harper turned to the Admiral. Launch the interceptors now. The Graxians are compromised. Already en route, she confirmed. ETA 3 minutes. What followed was something I can only describe as a rout. The Earth interceptors swarmed the Graxian vessels, which were now in disarray as panicked communications from the boarding party spread confusion through their ranks. The Federation ships, previously holding back due to the hostage situation, now joined the battle. Within 20 minutes, it was over. The Graxian ships had either surrendered or retreated, leaving behind their boarding party, who were now prisoners and still suffering the lingering effects of Gary's chemical warfare. I have to ask, Dr. Jones said, watching the cleanup operation on screen. Is this normal for first contact scenarios? I sighed deeply. Nothing about this has been normal. Well, the president said, approaching with Harper, I believe this calls for a resumption of our negotiations, under slightly revised terms. Ambassador Praxx looked wary. Revised how? The president smiled. The Federation brought technology. Earth brought Gary. I'd say that makes us even. And I've got plenty more where that came from. Gary added helpfully. Wait till you see what I can do with a pack of Mentos and some diet soda. As the diplomatic teams reassembled to continue negotiations, I found myself standing beside Dr. Jones, watching Gary enthusiastically explain the finer points of his swamp gas special to a group of fascinated Federation scientists. You know, I said, The Council is going to have a difficult time classifying your species." "Good," she replied with a satisfied smile. "We prefer it that way. But for administrative purposes, we must assign Earth some kind of designation," I insisted. "Every species has certain defining characteristics." Dr. Jones considered this for a moment. "If you need a category for us, try this: approach with caution. Contains Florida man." I couldn't argue with that. 3 days later, the revised treaty was ready for signing. The Federation Council, after receiving our reports and extensive footage of the Graxian incident, had hastily approved a significantly modified integration plan for Earth. The ceremony took place on the White House lawn, with representatives from both Earth and the Federation positioned beneath an elegant pavilion. Photographers and news crews documented everything, as humanity had decided that transparency was the best approach to introducing the world to its new galactic neighbors. "This marks a historic day," the President announced to the assembled crowd. "Not just for Earth, but for the entire galactic community. Today we take our place among the stars not as junior partners, but as full members of the Federation." Ambassador Kulaks, wearing a new ceremonial robe, his original never having been recovered from Gary, stepped forward to sign the document. "On behalf of the Supreme Council, I welcome Earth as the newest full member of the Galactic Federation, with all rights and responsibilities therein." Applause erupted from the crowd. I leaned toward Commander Zort. The Council ratified this remarkably quickly. After viewing the Graxian encounter, they decided that keeping Earth at arm's length might be more dangerous than bringing them into the fold, Zort replied dryly. "Something about better to have them inside the tent than outside." "A wise assessment," I agreed. "Plus," Zort added, "I believe they were quite impressed by the pizza." The signing complete, the President raised a glass. New friendships and new adventures among the stars. Glasses were raised in response, and the formal portion of the ceremony concluded. As guests mingled during the reception, I sought out Dr. Jones. "So," I said, "what's next for Earth, now that you've achieved full Federation membership?" "Oh, you know," she replied casually, "the usual. Establishing trade routes, cultural exchanges, preparing for the inevitable diplomatic incidents when we introduce the rest of the galaxy to Gary's cousins." I felt a momentary panic. "There are more like him?" "Florida has a population of 22 million, she said with a mischievous grin. "And that's just one state out of 50. Before I could process the implications of that terrifying information, Gary himself appeared, wearing what appeared to be a formal version of his usual attire. A button-up shirt with a fish pattern, shorts that almost reached his knees, and a hat declaring him Galaxy's one human. "There you are, space buddies." He greeted us enthusiastically. "Guess what? They made me Earth's official ambassador to something called the Zorgon Cluster." Dr. Jones nearly choked on her drink. "They what?" "Yeah," Gary beamed proudly. "Said my unique diplomatic approach would be perfect for them." I turned to Dr. Jones in alarm. The Zorgons are one of the most formal and protocol-driven species in the galaxy. They once declared war on a civilization for using the wrong tense in a greeting. "I know," Harper said, appearing beside us with that calculating smile. "That's precisely why Gary is perfect. But he'll cause an interstellar incident within minutes." I protested. "Exactly," the President confirmed, joining our group. "And when he does, yes, the Zorgons will be so focused on Gary that they won't notice our actual diplomatic team establishing direct relations with the Zorgon cultural minority groups who've been seeking recognition for centuries." I stared at the human leaders, newfound respect and horror mingling in equal measure. "You're using Gary as a diplomatic smoke bomb," Dr. Jones supplied helpfully. "You betcha." Gary agreed, clearly understanding his role perfectly well. "I'm going to show them Zorgons how we do things in the Sunshine State." As Gary wandered off to collect more drinks, I turned to the president. "Your species is terrifying." "Thank you," she replied sincerely. "We work at it." "The Federation has existed for 12,000 years, I said slowly, trying to process everything I'd learned about humans. "We've incorporated hundreds of species, established protocols for everything from dining etiquette to quantum physics research." "And?" Harper prompted. "And I believe the galaxy is about to change more in the next century than it has in the previous 12 millennia, I concluded. Dr. Jones raised her glass. "To chaos, then." "To controlled chaos," the president corrected with a wink. As I raised my glass in response, I caught sight of Gary across the lawn, demonstrating what appeared to be an air guitar to a group of bemused Federation cultural researchers. The galaxy would indeed never be the same. The Federation had brought gifts of technology and knowledge to Earth. Earth had brought Florida man. And somehow, against all logic and probability, that seemed like a fair exchange. 6 months later, I submitted my final report to the Supreme Council regarding Earth's integration into the Federation. The document was comprehensive, detailing everything from technological compatibility assessments to cultural exchange programs. In the recommendations section, I included only one line. "When dealing with humans, expect the unexpected, and keep Gary away from the atmospheric controls." The Council, in their infinite wisdom, classified the report as essential reading for all diplomats assigned to Earth sector. They also established a new diplomatic protocol classification, Florida Protocol, to be implemented when conventional diplomacy fails and unconventional solutions are required. Gary, I'm told, was very proud.